Well, Secretary of Defense Chuck Hagel packing up his office at the Pentagon, and one person not too happy about how his resignation went down. That person is, surprisingly, Vice President Joe Biden. The VP made it clear that he is, quote, ticked off. Biden's the latest in a string of leaders to take issue with the president and his staff, including Hillary Clinton and two ex-defense secretaries. So what is going on? Chris Kafinis is former chief of staff for West Virginia Democratic Senator Joe Manchin. Deneen Borelli is president of Conservative Review and outreach director for FreedomWorks. Thank you both for joining us. Chris, first of all, last week, Vice President Biden actually said that he was ticked off about how the president forced out Defense Secretary Chuck Hagel, who, by the way, happens to be, as you know, a longtime Senate colleague of his. So I don't think he was very happy with that decision. What does it say about the disconnect between the president and his staff to push out Hagel after less than 2 years after appointing him to the position?
Well, I mean, listen, some of this is kind of the normal course of events in D.C. You know, administrations will have certain changes they'll make in cabinet positions. You obviously saw, with President Bush, Secretary Rumsfeld was resigned or pushed out, depending on how you want to define it, following the midterm elections during, President Bush's second term. With respect to Secretary Hagel, I always thought personally it was kind of an odd fit. I mean, I like Secretary Hagel personally, but it just didn't seem to be a relationship that kind of clicked. Now, I will say that there are clearly tensions in every White House between the White House staff and the cabinet. You may argue one way or the other, maybe more so in the administration. I don't necessarily see it that way. I think it's kind of par for the course. Lots of big egos, lots of big agendas, and sometimes that unfortunately leads to conflict.
Deneen, would you agree this is par for the course, the way that President Obama is handling his own people?
Well, the way I see it, President Obama is the problem, and that is why you have a number of Democrats who are being vocal and criticizing Obama about what he's doing. And you also have to think about the results of the recent midterm elections, how a number of Republicans have now come into office. There's also a Gallup poll, Julie, that is very interesting. Obama had in 2009 48% of support among non-college graduates, the middle class. Now it's 27%. So clearly Obama's big government policies are not working and people are not happy about it, including those in his Democrat Party.
All right. So then, Chris, the White House has also been accused of micromanaging national security policy. Is it selectively listening to the experts on how to handle ISIS, Iraq, Afghanistan, other things like that? Because many experts would say that President Obama sort of makes decisions on his own and doesn't necessarily listen to the experts that he hires to give him the proper advice, almost as if, what's the point of having the experts there if he's not going to take the advice?
Well, there's always going to be a degree, if you will, micromanaging from the White House because he's the president of the United States. That was true. That's going to be true for every president. That's going to be true for every administration. I think the difference here is you're talking about some incredibly complex foreign policy challenges, whether you're talking about the Ukraine, the rise of ISIS. These are, I think, fundamental, issues in terms of what is the right course of policy that creates a lot of debate. Now, in the course of in the context of President Obama's administration, you also have this unique dynamic where his chief of staff is a national security expert, which I think creates another element to this, where you'll have almost multiple voices in the president's ear. But at the same time, where people were saying, listen, he's not listening to his defense secretary, the people are also sitting there on the flip side saying he has a very close relationship with General Dempsey, who's the head of the Joint Chiefs. So this is, again, I think part of this is Washington kind of making something bigger than it is.
I know, but don't you think
it's a bit... But at the same time, it's a challenge.
Yeah,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
When you hear from the vice president himself and former allies like,
well, in fairness.
Let's talk about Hillary Clinton, okay? First of all, in an interview with Hillary Clinton, the former Secretary of State basically criticized Obama's principle of foreign policy, and her words are pretty strong. She said, great nations need organizing principles, and don't do stupid stuff is not an organizing principle. Deneen, what do you make of Hillary's comments? Pretty strong.
Well, yeah, I can't wait until the Clinton machine is really unleashed to be critical of President Obama. Get the popcorn ready. But he should have been more in tune and listened to those on the ground when it came to foreign policy, Julie. And listen, Obama has lied to Americans, is losing credibility, and this is what we're witnessing now, and he brought it on himself, and that is why his popularity is dropping like a stone.
Chris, it doesn't look good, the fact that Hillary Clinton is distancing herself from the president's policies. But this is my question. Why weeks after making that statement about stupid decisions, essentially, she made a rare public statement of support for Mr. Obama's executive action to grant legal status and work permits to nearly 5 million illegal immigrants? I mean, some would say it's pretty dangerous for Mrs. Clinton to side with Mr. Obama's immigration policy. So why did she do that?
Well, I would say, a couple things. One, with respect to the report about, Vice President Biden, those were reports unsubstantiated. As far as I know, Vice President Biden did not say that on the record anywhere. Putting that aside, with respect to Secretary Clinton or former Secretary Clinton, you're always going to have differences of opinion between, the current holder of the White House and what may be a campaign in the future by Secretary Clinton for the White House. They're going to have different perspectives on how to deal with big challenges with respect to foreign policy or whatever, or domestic policy. That is not, I think, surprising. At the end of the day, you're going to see a lot more commonality. But I think we got to be careful about exaggerating how these internal differences
Janine, I just got to ask you real quick, because we have to go, okay? Yeah. By essentially siding with the president on immigration, he is alienating the black community, is he not?
Absolutely.
Or is she not? And is this her way of trying to soften up the Hispanic community?
Well, she's probably trying to play it both ways, Julie. And when you mention the black community with immigration and the jobs that are going to go to these illegal individuals, they're siding more with the illegal individuals versus Americans, where unemployment is still unacceptably high among the black community. And so it is going to be detrimental.
All right, that's all the time we have. Chris Kafinis, Janine Borelli, thank you very much
Julie.
to the both of you.